Hello everyone and welcome to this episode of the Fro Football Podcast. Following up on our last episode where we discussed kickers and tight ends, we got to get to some of the excitement, and that is quarterbacks and running backs, some of the biggest part of your fantasy draft. It is fantasy football season. Most of the drafts are taking place over the next 2 weeks, right when all the preseason stuff gets underway and we find out who's going to bust a leg or blow an ACL, tear an Achilles or whatever. You don't want to draft too early. People who want to draft it August 1st, they get the itch and they want to jump into draft season. Bad idea. Too many people have come into drafts and drafted people who we literally, the 1 year, sat there in draft night with the football game on behind us. First round of the draft, somebody drafted a quarterback who broke their leg in that game. By all means, check out these podcast episodes if you are a fantasy football player. We're going to get started with the next category of our fantasy analysis, and we are here tonight again with my good friend Jason Peters, who is here to help analyze the different players. We're looking at quarterbacks tonight. Jay, how are you?
I'm doing well. Never had a bad day in my life.
The quarterback position, I feel like every year we go into our draft, everybody scrambles to grab one of the first couple guys. Really, after the first, maybe the second, it's almost the same thing all the way down the list. There's nobody who stands out as this person is going to just light the world on fire. That's what makes it so it's so hard to determine when to draft one. Jay, I'm guessing, I'm going to take a wild guess here, that your top two are the same top two that I have, which is Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady.
Absolutely.
Aaron Rodgers is going to throw 3 to 4 touchdowns every week. Over the fantasy season, you're looking at 35 to 40 touchdowns, and if Tom Brady doesn't get hurt, you're looking at the same thing. Incidentally, if you have Tom Brady, and for some reason he deflates a football or gets suspended or breaks a leg, grab his backup, because the system that they run in New England does well.
Eat the words out of my mouth. I'll never say Tom Brady isn't talented, but New England is just a well-oiled machine. You can plug in an interchangeable part, and you know what? No, another quarterback's not going to be Tom Brady, but you can put in a serviceable backup and still, score 4 touchdowns in the game.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's going to happen.
Happened last year. I think they had 2 different quarterbacks in the time Brady was suspended, and I think they were undefeated while he was gone.
I'm terrible with names and bad memory. Wasn't the one Garoppolo, the one quarterback?
Yeah, Jimmy Garoppolo, who should be starting for somebody right now. That's how good I think he may be.
Didn't he have a 3-touchdown game, if I recall?
Yeah, absolutely. And he's not that bad. And it's not just Tom Brady. Bill Belichick has no problem cutting anybody. If you're not Tom Brady, you're not safe. Maybe Gronkowski. Nobody's safe in New England. And this offseason just says it all. Last year, LeGarrette Blount, he gets dropped like dead weight. And it's like that with all the players on their team. They have so much turnover on that team. It's insane because Bill Belichick's system wins. At the top of the list, Rodgers, Brady. And I can get Aaron Rodgers. I probably would take him in the first round, starting in, say, maybe 5, 6, 7, somewhere in there. Now, mind you, if you're listening to this podcast, just for clarification purposes, our scoring system in our league, Jason and I have been playing in for years, our league is not heavily slated towards yards and is also not a PPR league. Our scores, when I go online and I see certain Yahoo leagues, you see like 145 to 120. I hate those leagues because that's not football. To me, fantasy football was always supposed to be a mockery of the real thing. A real football game is like 32-27. I don't need my fantasy game being 142 to 137. I don't need to see all that. So when we go through these rankings, a lot of our experience and basis for our judgment is going to be based on the scoring system we're very much familiar with. Not that we're oblivious to the others, though. We both play in other leagues online, a lot of the free Yahoo league, Yahoo Public, NFL.com's league, ESPN's league. I'm in all of them because I'm an idiot. Just so you understand, like when I do my analysis on points and things like that, that's kind of the perspective I'm coming from. Who do you have coming in at 3?
I have Drew Brees. I'm kind of touching back a little bit, and not to give away any of my draft strategy for our upcoming draft, but honestly, there's 2 or 3 running backs and about 3 or 4 wide receivers I would take before I even took Rodgers or Brady. Just because the drop-off from the elite quarterbacks to, honestly, I have like a 50-point swing from 1 to 15 in quarterbacks, where in other positions it's as much as 100-point swings from 3 to 5. I'm definitely going to take those scarcer talents first, just because you got to get those assets before you commit to a quarterback, where you can probably still get a decent quarterback in the 2nd or 3rd round pretty easily.
Absolutely. And just so people also understand, we had said this on a previous episode, in our league, we're required to draft our starting roster prior to drafting backups. So when we talk about, getting a kicker or quarterback or something like that, we have to, in our first 7 rounds, get certain guys. For us, one of the strategies we get to employ that's very unique, and I got some people asking me questions in the offseason, right after the NFL draft, about fantasy football. That's why we're doing these episodes. And one of the questions they asked when I said about our unique drafting system was, oh, well, that helps you, because if you only have 10 guys in your league and 9 people have already taken a quarterback, you don't have to spend a draft pick until the 7th round to take one because no one else can take a backup. And they are absolutely correct. If you want to alter your league a little bit, I actually like that aspect of our draft, not being able to take backups until after you fill out a starting roster. It prevents one person from stockpiling 19 running backs and forcing you to trade everything away and make their team the mega team. I've seen that multiple times in other leagues before. Hopefully it avoids that. If you're in a auction league, that's a whole different story. You can get anybody you want in an auction league. I actually have sometimes thought about trying to convince our league to go to an auction system. But in that case, if you're doing an auction, and Jay, I don't know if you've ever done an auction league before, but the last one that I was in,
baseball, wasn't thrilled with it.
I didn't do real well with the baseball one. The football one I enjoyed quite a bit, but that's just because I like to wheel and deal and I really love the numbers thing, and I think people overspend so much in those. I sat back for like the first 3 or 4 or 5 guys, didn't say a bid, just because I knew people were going to blow their stuff all over the first 4 or 5 people. And then all of a sudden I'm sitting there with all my money still, and oh, wait a minute, you already spent $60 on Aaron Rodgers of your $200 kitty? I'm sorry, you can have Aaron Rodgers, I'll take Tom Brady for $25. So if you're listening to this, keep those kind of things in mind too. When we're talking about these talents, it's not always about 1 through 15. Sometimes it's about, if you're in one of those leagues, can I get Jameis Winston, who's further down the list, can I get him for $12 instead of dropping $60 on Aaron Rodgers? Because that's a significant shift in value. On my list, I also have Drew Brees at number 3. I think Drew Brees is timeless. He's going to play until he's ready to leave. Maybe I'm being a little over presumptuous there, but...
And honestly, I in my head, I have Drew Brees and Matt Ryan as 3 and 3A.
Yeah, I can see that.
Or 3A and 3B, however you want to say it. Just because Matt Ryan has so many insane weapons.
And both of his running backs catch the ball.
Insane. Yes.
You know, he's got a good tight end now.
He just sees the end zone and hits it. I feel like every time I watch the Falcons play, he's just drilling the end zone constantly.
He always finds the end zone. He just doesn't always win the game. Thankfully, last year he was winning a lot of games too. I think he will again this year. That's why on my list, Matt Ryan's listed at 5 behind Russell Wilson. And I have a problem with that because I don't like Russell Wilson's receivers.
And I think he's ranked too high as well. I think he's a risk at that high.
Especially for value.
I'd have him closer to 10.
Yeah, I can see that.
Just because he doesn't have the weapons. He has another year on him. He's not going to be able to scramble for scores like he used to. Every year you go further, the less likely a scrambling quarterback is going to, have the ability to find the end zone that way. So,
I think that's what a lot of this ranking here is they're looking at him as being the dual threat quarterback. I don't see that as much anymore. I think they don't want him to get hurt, so they're going to tell him to stop running.
And coming from someone who's watched several scrambling quarterbacks in my lineage of being an Eagles fan, I've seen it happen with everyone. I've watched Randall Cunningham slow down. I watched Donovan McNabb slow down. Heck, I even watched Michael Vick slow down.
Let's just hope that Carson Wentz doesn't decide to slow down anytime soon.
He should have a good 5 years, but then again, how long has
it's true.
He been in the league?
You're right in that window.
He's right, yeah. It's usually that 5, 6, 7 year, and then that's where they slow down. Then they have to turn into a real passer. And if you don't have the weapons, how are you a real passer?
But he's ranked 4. Quarterbacks listed 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, and 11, maybe even 12, and 13. Gosh, at 14, all the way down to 14, could easily be above him. I don't want to give away all those names, obviously, at once, but number 6 on this list is Jameis Winston, and when you have Mike Evans to throw the ball to, and you sign Deshaun Jackson, you draft O.J. Howard, you have Cameron Brate, Doug Martin, who likes to catch the ball out of the backfield, I don't understand how Russell Wilson is ahead of you on the quarterback rankings. I just don't. Where do you have Russell Wilson on your list? I'm sorry, not Russell Wilson, Jameis Winston.
11.
11?
Yes.
See, and that doesn't surprise me either because, like I said, that next huge chunk are very similar. Like, after Jameis Winston, I have Kirk Cousins.
I have Cousins listed at 8.
See, it doesn't surprise me either.
Then again, on my list at 6, I have Andrew Luck. But, if I'm not mistaken, he's injured.
Yeah, Andrew Luck's they're saying he'll be ready for the start of the year. My list has him at 15, but I think that's the fantasy index, which they have Andrew Luck at 15. If he has any chance of starting the season, maybe he misses a game or 2, but he's still a phenomenal quarterback. I don't necessarily have him as high. Cousins, I was okay with being relatively high just because I love Jamison Crowder.
Where do you have Ben Roethlisberger on your list?
Their list has Roethlisberger at 14.
Whoa. I have
14. And I'd much rather see him higher up the list too, because you've got Martavis Bryant coming back, the best wide receiver in the NFL, Antonio Brown.
Absolutely.
You've got other receivers on the team, and Le'Veon Bell catches as many balls as the wide receivers do. I don't understand Roethlisberger being that far down. The only thing that may play into it is, and I'm noticing on their list, they have him slated as only playing 14 games. So they're looking at total fantasy points. Now, that's not the only factor, but when he plays, he's a stud.
The other thing, even though he doesn't move well, they do a lot of quarterback sneaks and sweeps that he ends up in the end zone.
Yeah, absolutely.
I remember last year he had at least 4 runs for a touchdown.
Yeah, and you know what the other thing is, and I didn't even mention, we were running down all the weapons he has. Tight end position, solid as well. There really isn't a weak spot on their offensive side of the ball. My list has Phillip Rivers coming in at number 8. That's a dagger in the heart for me. I feel like Phillip Rivers is missed opportunity. Now, he's an arrogant jerk to begin with, so I'm not talking about him as a person. I'm not a fan of his character, but his football talent is undeniable, and he's never had anything other than Antonio Gates to throw to, because anytime they bring in a weapon, they get hurt. And now you're looking at a team, they draft Mike Williams. He's going to be out. I have a tough time putting Rivers that high. Where's he at on your list?
I have him ranked at 13.
See, that to me is much more reasonable. You take him as a backup. You know, our league is a 10-team league. For us, after the top 10, we're all drafting backups anyways. So for us, if we went strictly by the list I'm looking at, having someone like Phillip Rivers as your backup is not a big deal because there's 10 other guys you wouldn't mind having as your starter.
Something I'm chomping the bits to get to. I have a quarterback on my list that I think is probably going to break out as a real star this year. And a lot of people could probably see this come with Marcus Mariota. Yeah, I have him listed at 9. I think by the end of the season, he's top 5.
I have him at 11, and I think 11's way too far down the list.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, and they invested in the wide receiver position, brought in Eric Decker, drafted a wide receiver. They had talent already. I
don't remember the specifics, but didn't they also reinforce their offensive line too?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a tough time buying Mariota that far down the list, and it's not an injury thing because this thing has him listed as starting all 16 games. They actually on my list have him behind Dak Prescott and Matthew Stafford. Which Stafford, I actually really have a problem with Stafford being this far down the list just because Matthew Stafford has added what is turning out to be a shocking new wide receiver. He's going to be lining up opposite Golden Tate, Marvin Jones, and I'm curious to see how that plays out because they haven't had a real legit wide receiver threat since Calvin Johnson decided to hang up the boots.
I have Stafford at 17, and honestly, having had him as my quarterback a couple times, he doesn't find the end zone enough.
Yeah,
even when he had Megatron, he that was the only time he was finding the end zone was connecting with Calvin Johnson. Without that stud wideout, I know you say he's got a new target, but
I think part of their ranking him where they have him, they're expecting Eric Ebron to be a big part of it, and I'm trying to give them the benefit of the doubt there. I don't know if he's going to be anything. They have him ahead of Dak Prescott. I actually have a little bit of a problem with that because Dallas did so well last year.
You know what? Please don't insinuate that this is because I'm an Eagles fan. I don't see Dak Prescott replicating what he did last year. Their offensive line got weaker. They're going to be without Ezekiel Elliott for 6 games. He probably is not going to reproduce this season. I think Dak Prescott is due for a bust.
You know what I'm surprised with, and I'm just noticing now, coming in at 12 on my list is Cam Newton, who only 2 years ago was a debate for the first pick in the draft. I don't know that I see Cam Newton being number 12.
I have him ranked at 10.
That blows my mind. Like, if Kelvin Benjamin, who apparently was ballooned up to 270 pounds in the offseason, and then he dropped down to like 248 or something like that the other day, if that's true and he's getting his speed back and he's just a big wide receiver, fine. But if Kelvin Benjamin returns to form the way he was 2 years ago, Newton's got to go up the list higher than what he's at, especially when you got a pass-catching running back you just drafted in the NFL draft. I don't understand him being that low. I expect him to be a few slots higher. The one that there's actually 2 that frustrate me that are further down the list. One, Derek Carr.
You also got to remember he has Olsen to throw to also.
Yeah, that's true.
One of the best scoring touchdowns in the league. But go ahead.
I don't understand Derek Carr being so low. You've got Amari Cooper to throw to, stud wide receivers on both sides of the field.
He's another one that could blossom into a superstar this year.
But he was a stud last year. Like, I don't know. I'm a little partial.
Yes,
I like the Raiders a little bit. And I had him on my team last year, and I never regretted starting him. Not once. As a matter of fact, as much as I'm a huge Chargers fan, I would have loved to have seen the Raiders go to the Super Bowl. Because I thought Derek Carr and the Raiders did such a great job last year. They deserved to be there. When he got hurt, heart sunk for them. And I thought it was terrible. I expected him to be in the top 5-6 quarterbacks. And this list has him all the way down at 13. Not as frustrating as what I'm going to bounce off Jason now, because I'm curious to see. I know we were going to stop at 15. I got to jump on my list down to 19, which is where they have Carson Wentz slated. Jason is a diehard Eagles fan. I am not, but I will tell you, I think Carson Wentz is significantly better than 19. I look at who's in front of him on the list. I think he's as good or better right now than Dak Prescott, Matthew Stafford, probably close to Kirk Cousins. And look, Andy Dalton's a solid quarterback, but he's never done anything to blow up the numbers. Carson Palmer's getting old, and they're all ranked ahead of him. Andrew Luck is hurt right now. Eli Manning has a great wide receiver core, but he can only spread the ball so much, and they have no running game. So I have a really tough time with Carson Wentz being so far down the list.
On my list, let's see, Carson Wentz we have ranked at 18.
See, so there's no love.
I don't know that I agree with that either, but then again, coming off of last year, he had a hard time finding the end zone. That's why Caleb Sturgis is ranked so high on the kicker rankings.
Yeah, but you know what, though?
He would drive him down the field and then so frustratingly not be able to cross the goal line. But then again, they did add 2 wideouts that should help.
They added a running back.
They added a running back, a goal line specific back. And I try not to put credence into preseason games, but I really hope they're just messing around with that whole sweep out with Blunt. They need to plow him through the middle and just use him to get that easy yard or two. You're going to plow through the middle with Blunt. But anyway, back.
I'm going to get off all this Eagle talk.
Okay, sorry.
We're going to go into running backs.
Yes, we'll stop boring people.
Running backs, let's just be honest, it's kind of like the quarterback position. You've got 2, and then you've got a cluster. You've got David Johnson, and you got Le'Veon Bell. They list that David Johnson's going to start 14 games. So they're penalizing him 2 games already, and he's still the number 1 running back. And then Le'Veon Bell, they project only starting 13 games because of his suspension situation, and he's the number 2 running back.
I actually have him reversed. I have Le'Veon Bell listed 1 and Johnson listed 2.
Not surprised.
Projected points-wise, after those 2, I mean, I have them listed as 408 and 406 projected point-wise. Then my number 3, Melvin Gordon, is 287. You're talking about over 100-point drop-off from 2 to 3. That's insane.
You know, they don't give the season total for points here in their projections, but I will tell you that David Johnson is projected to have 19.5 fantasy points a game. Le'Veon Bell, 17.4, and after that, the number 3 running back on my list goes down all the way to 12.9.
Who was your listed number 3?
Number 3, I have Devonta Freeman. Now that he's got his new contract out of the way. But see, I don't agree with that ranking, because when you've got Tevin Coleman breathing down your neck, I can't put you as the 3rd best running back in football.
I have him as 5th.
I'd be much more comfortable with 5th. I like your number 3 for 2 reasons. 1, I think it's a legit number 3. They have him projected at 13.3 points, which is not a huge number, but he's projected to start all the games, and he's a Charger. I'm a Charger guy. Melvin Gordon on my list comes in at number 5. I actually like him a lot better at 4. On my list, they have LaShawn McCoy.
That's who's on my list. God, as an Eagles fan, he hurts. Because the man just keeps going, keeps scoring, keeps performing. Someday, if I ever get to speak to Chip Kelly in person, I'm going to thank him in my own special way.
Oh, I'm not surprised. Yeah, you and everybody who liked Deshaun Jackson, or it kills me.
Deshaun Jackson, I can understand. I mean, I didn't agree with, but I can understand a little bit more.
Jeremy Maclin.
Maclin and McCoy made no sense.
Yeah.
Just stupid trades. I know he was trying to project his culture, but oh my Lord.
Last year, I drafted him number 2. I'll admit that. I'm admitting it on the air. I drafted the number 6 rank on my list at number 2, and that was Todd Gurley. I really thought Todd Gurley was going to explode last year. He's a stud running back. They have no line. No wide receivers.
He had no holes, and he was blocking so much. He was on blocking assignments more than he should have been.
You know what I hope, though? I hope with the trade, the acquisition of Sammy Watkins, that helps give some space to Gurley, and maybe he can get back to being more of an elite running back. The problem is, what is this, year 3? I don't see it. I really don't. I'm starting to get concerned that maybe he's just not as good as everybody projected he would be.
Number 6, I have Jordan Howard listed.
I'm okay with that.
He projects to be a solid scoring back. Unfortunately, I mean, he's on the Bears, but
You see, but that's the thing, though. For me, all right, so the Bears are one of the lowest rated teams in the entire NFL. They're going to stay at the bottom of the NFL. The biggest thing for me here with Jordan Howard being so high, because on my list, he's ranked at 8, so he's not all that far off from where you're at. They're going to be behind, which means they can't run the ball. They got to pass it. Unless they're just throwing the towel in for the year. I mean, you know what I find weird, though? The next one on my list is another questionable one. They have Dalvin Cook of Minnesota at number 7, and I have a tough time with that considering they signed a running back this offseason.
Dalvin Cook all the way down at 14 on my...
It blows my mind. You know, when you look at last year and you look at what was done in Oakland, you know, you see the production that they got from the running back position. Then they lose their running back. He goes to Minnesota under the impression that he's going to start, and now instead he's going to be sharing time with rookie Dalvin Cook. Now, don't get me wrong. Dalvin Cook looks good. I don't see him being the man. I really don't know about him being that high on the list. I'm surprised that all the way down at 9. Now, I get it. He's going to be out. Who knows when we're going to see him play, but Ezekiel Elliott, they're projecting him only playing 10 games because of the 6-game suspension. But they still have him as touchdowns per game, full touchdown, 17.6 points per game. So if you add up the 6 games he's out, total fantasy point-wise, he's still darn near the next 6 guys ahead of him on the list.
I wouldn't touch him with a 400-foot pole.
Cowboys would be scary. Real scary.
If he's not there, he is the linchpin to the Cowboys. If he isn't there, I see the rest of the team just kind of collapsing through unless they can somehow find another running back to fill the void. But obviously there's going to be no one they have that's going to have that talent.
Well, you know, Darren McFadden hopefully still has something left in the tank.
McFadden is a serviceable back, but that's like, how can I put this? That's like replacing a dump truck with like a Chevy Ranger pickup truck. Both will keep going. Both will keep pushing. One's going to open holes.
Yeah, I suppose.
Push forward. The other one, no.
One of my favorite guys on the list, and not because I think he's going to light the world on fire, but just because I love it that a Cleveland Browns player makes it on the list, Isaiah Crowell. Yes. I have him listed at 10. I had him last year.
I have him at 10 as well.
I loved him last year because nobody wanted a Cleveland player. I put him on my team. I started him quite often. You know, I made the playoffs pretty early in the season. Then, of course, I flopped in the playoffs. That sucked. I love Isaiah Crowell. I actually think he's a stud.
I have him at 10 also.
But you know somebody we haven't talked about? And on my list, he's 11. I think yours has him a little higher. Is Jay Ajayi from the Dolphins.
I'm glad you said that name because I always butcher it.
Oh, my goodness.
I'm sorry. No, I have him at 8, and I think in that explosive up-and-coming Dolphins offense, I think he's going to be good. Now, unfortunately, the Dolphins have a little bit of a quarterback issue. I don't know how well Cutler's... Not Cutler, what am I thinking of?
You're thinking of Cutler because he's the replacement.
No,
but
for some reason, my brain slipped.
With Tannehill, you know what the thing is, though? With Tannehill going out, Cutler coming in, previously worked with Adam Gase, the coach. The thing I find interesting is I turn on the internet today, and I'm looking before we were going to record this episode, and I see one group talks about how the coach was thrilled with Cutler's performance in the preseason game last night. And I'm like, thrilled? What did he do that was so fabulous? And then I look at it, and like he was like 3 of 6 for like 24 yards or something like that. But they were saying, oh, well, there was a 38-yard pass down the sideline that got called back from a holding penalty, but it showed that he could scramble, and his targets were right on. And I'm like, well, what the heck is this, the second coming or something? Like, I don't understand why they were so... And then I flipped over to a different internet source, and they were saying, Cutler flounders in his NFL return. Dolphins in trouble. I'm like, wow, talk about a difference in media reporting.
Media spin machine. It's not just for fake news.
Oh, my God, it's terrible. You know, the next guy on my list, I actually have a tough time with because I love his backup more than I like him. And maybe because I live near Philadelphia, I harbor some resentment. But that's DeMarco Murray for Tennessee, comes in at 12 on my list.
I have him at 13. And I see him in that offense with Mariota. I see him being a potent weapon.
I'm hoping Derrick Henry takes the job from him. I'm not a DeMarco Murray fan. Speaking of Philadelphia links, my next one on my list is in Kansas City with Andy Reid, and that's Spencer Ware. My perception of Spencer Ware is I actually have a very positive feel about him because I thought he did really well in picking up where Jamal Charles left off last year. I almost said Jamal Lewis. My God, I'm really going back to
I have Spencer Ware ranked pretty low. I have him at 22nd.
Wow, that is so low. I see that's a thing too.
Isn't he competing with carries with someone else?
Yeah, you still have Charkandrick West there. He was relatively solid when they gave him the ball, and they gave them the ball quite a bit. What I'm a little surprised at is he's so far up that list compared to people like Lamar Miller in Houston. Because Houston's known for running the ball like crazy. Last year, Lamar Miller was like the 3rd or 4th ranked running back, and now he's all the way down on my list. I have him at 16. And I actually like Lamar Miller, and I like the Houston offense. I think they're going to surprise people. Yeah, their quarterback situation is kind of a mess right now. That's never been an issue before. I feel like they've always been able to run the ball. They've got a great scheme.
Where do you have Marshawn Lynch?
Marshawn Lynch. Good question.
He's competing for carries, but when he has the ball, he scores.
Yeah, but he's been out of the game for a year. I have him at 29.
Oh, wow.
Right below LeGarrette Blount in Philadelphia at 28.
I know he's been off for some time, but no, I actually have him at 15.
You know what my issue with looking? Well, actually, you know what I have with my problem I have with my scoring system here? It's got Marshawn Lynch at 29, and that's 2 spots behind Derrick Henry, who's the backup to DeMarco Murray. That blows my mind. A backup should never be ahead of the starters on any team. I don't care who they are. You know who I think is going to be a breakout candidate this year is Carlos Hyde. I feel like they've done a few things to get a little bit better, and their blocking and whatnot has improved with some additions to the line. He may have breakout written all over him.
I have him listed at 19.
I feel like that's where I have him on mine too. I just feel like he should be higher than that. There's like a mishmash of other people in right in this neighborhood of the rankings. They have Robbie Kelly of Washington in there, Leonard Fournette of Jacksonville. I actually think he may be the rookie of the year. Leonard Fournette, to me, you go to a team, you've got Allen Robinson, Blake Bortles. Blake Bortles he's regressed quite a bit from his campaign 2 years ago. I think when you look at their situation, I know people kind of knock him down the list because he's got Yeldon behind him, Chris Ivory behind him.
What do you think of Joe Mixon?
I hate Joe Mixon. Not as a player, as a human being. What a scumbag.
Oh, I agree. But as a player, do you think?
But you know what though? They were saying that coming into camp, you're seeing Jeremy Hill work really hard because he's got competition.
I have him ranked. Actually, I have Joe Mixon ranked at 17.
Wow, really?
Yeah. That's
where I have Fournette.
I thought it was odd.
At 18 I have Mark Ingram, who I thought should have been a little higher, but then he's competing with Adrian Peterson. I've got Ty Montgomery in at 20.
Yeah, I got Mark Ingram all the way down to 26.
Ty Montgomery shocks me a little bit. I actually expected Ty Montgomery to move up the list. If you were a wide receiver, they love to throw the ball out of the backfield. He's pretty much the only running back of any substance they have.
I have him at 16 on my list.
I like him. I had him last year. I picked him up too.
I think he's going to be a solid pick too. He's one of those nice running backs that's going to score you a fair amount of points. You could probably get in the 4th or 5th round pretty easily. Incidentally,
you mentioned Mixon. He's rated 22 on my list, just ahead of somebody who I think, if you were in a PPR league, somebody who I think should be significantly higher on the list is Tevin Coleman from Atlanta. I have Tevin Coleman all the way down the list at, 23. And let's face it, I don't know if anybody realizes this, but he's projected to get 14.4 fantasy points per game, and he's the backup. He's a .77 touchdowns per game player. He's only slated to start one game, but he's supposed to be averaging more yards per game than Devonta Freeman, who he's backing up. His projections per game are higher than the starter, but he's further down the list, if that makes any sense.
None at all.
Where's he ranked on your list?
I have him listed at 20, actually.
See, that seems so far down. When you got Tevin Coleman at 20 and you've got Devonta Freeman so much further up the list.
I have Freeman at 5.
Ugh.
Are they running the ball that much?
They spread the ball that much. I think that's the problem. You know who I'm surprised to see drop down so far? Mike Gilsey of New England, who apparently is not going to be the lead ball carrier there. That shocked me. Adrian Peterson on my list, 25. But then you've got starters, Terrence West, all the way down here, instead of and sitting behind a lot of the backups. But the one guy who I want to make sure I talk about,
I have Terrence West all the way down at 48. A field goals.
Yeah. You know the team that's not going to score on the ground is New York. They've got Paul Perkins. He's slated number 30 on my list. You've got Odell Beckham. 3 wide receivers really that should be studs.
Running game, though.
And not a running game to speak of. So, yeah, you can't stack the box against them because you got too many wide receivers, and Eli can still get rid of the ball quick. But if you play a team that has some decent corners, you're screwed because you can't run the ball. You need to run the ball to take pressure off those receivers. They're going to be playing a lot of nickel and dime packages all season long because they don't have to stack the box. There's nobody that can run the ball there. That should do it for this episode. We're going to move on to our next episode, and when we get to there, that's when we finally get to the wide receivers. We'll cover those for you guys in detail. Special thanks as always go out to bensound.com and purpleplanet.com for producing all our music and sound effects used throughout today's show. I'm Fred Froelich, better known as Mr. Fro. I want to thank you for taking some time with us today, and until next episode, take care, everybody. Have a great one.